Anyways, we are wrapping up our leadership conversation today. This is the last chapter. That's why we're doing it on a Friday instead of Freestyle Friday. But today, we're going to end with the law of legacy. And the law of legacy says a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. Max Dupree, a leadership expert, says succession is one of the key responsibilities of leadership. So when I started out in church ministry, I was in my early 30s and I was attending a conference at the time. And there was a leader of this denomination. And at the time, he was 50. And I was shocked at what he said because at 50, he said he was transitioning out of doing, church pastoral stuff and he was moving into coaching other leaders. Like he felt like his season to be on the front line had ended and he was taking a backseat role. And at the time, I was like going, man, that sounds really young to me. Like, for him not to feel like he needs to be at the front lines. And yet, what I didn't realize that he was practicing at the time was this idea of the law of legacy. John Maxwell describes the law of legacy kind of like a relay race. He says the competition is always won or lost in the exchange of the baton. And the best coaches for runners, they teach and spend a significant amount of time on how to hand off the baton. So every other part of the race is dependent on the individual, right? Their running skill, their ability, their talent. And yet, a good exchange, right? The exchange part is where you're not running for yourself, but you're running for someone else. And a good exchange can give you up to 1 second difference in the race. That could make or break whether you win or you lose. And so the law of succession really is this need to know on how to hand off the baton to other leaders. And so when we think about maybe at KW Urban and Midtown, right? How does the market centers operate without us in leadership and continue on and impact and legacy of its mission? And if it's for us, right, personally, it's not if we are passing on a legacy to our kids, but what we are passing on to our kids, regardless if it's positive or negative. So we're always passing off of something. The question is, what are we passing on? So there's 4 stages that John Maxwell describes in the leadership growth journey. The first one is achievement, right? And that comes with someone who's able to do great things for themselves. The second one is success comes when he or she empowers someone to do great things with them. The third one is significance when it comes when a person develops great leaders to do great things for them. And then the last one is legacy, when he or she raises an organization to do great things without them. John Maxwell experienced this in his own leadership journey. So in his 20s, he described himself as saying he was on the path of saying, I want to make a difference. In his 30s, he changed and realized that he wasn't hitting his full potential. And so he changed the thought process. He said, I want to make a difference with people. So he was going to have to be able to lead people, and that's what began his leadership journey, including other people in his life that they could take a journey with him and making a difference with him. In his 40s, he says, I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference. And so this is the law of the inner circle, not only just to recruit people to be part of your team, but to recruit the right people on your team. Selecting and hiring well and understanding how to match their abilities with their passions and making sure all of that's in alignment with where John and his vision was. And then when he is in his 50s, he says, I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference. And here's the questions that he was asking. What am I living for? What am I doing this for? What is the return? And what am I staking my life on things that would have a greater potential than himself, right? Could the people that he was surrounding himself with do things that last beyond him? And so back to my story, right? When I was talking about earlier, when I was in my early 30s, and then there was a leader who was stepping back and coaching when he was 50. One interesting thing about my own personal journey on Quantum Leap was uh 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. And this was the second time I was taking Quantum Leap. It was with Rach Potter and Seychelle were teaching it. And as I had my preliminary mission statement developed from the first time I took Quantum Leap. But what Rach and Seychelle did was they took it a step further and they challenged me what my role was with the mission statement. And at the time I was 50, and it brought me back to that one moment where I would heard that story or of the guy taking a back seat, and I thought, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden it hit me like I was like, oh my gosh, this is me, like I'm in that same role as that person. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, what if my role was taking a back seat? What if my role was not necessarily being on the front lines anymore? That my role was to be a coach. I had come off a season where I was on the sidelines for 5 years and I was literally just stepping back into getting engaged to trying to make a difference in people's lives. I was doing a season of self-care and it was a hard season, right? But I had nothing to give. Everything that I would give, I knew it was going to come from a negative place. And so then now when I look back and I say, okay, well, what do I want to do, right? I don't know how long I have. And actually, I was chatting with my daughter, Jenna, right before she went back to OU, and I said, I really don't have any desire, right? When I retire, I have no desire to sit on a beach. I have no desire just to go out and see the world. But what I do have a desire is I've got a baton in my hand and I'm ready to hand it off to the next generation. A baton of leadership, influence, right? How do we make a difference in our city, bring hope to a world that honestly is getting harder and harder? Like I'm nervous for the next generation. I'm nervous for my kids of what's coming down the pike. And that's the law of legacy that we have. And so I come back to that question of what John was asking. What are you living for? What story do you want to tell? Maybe it's not just telling a story, but actually living a better story. Asking those questions, because ultimately it comes down to what kind of legacy do you want to live? You see, the laws of leadership it's not the end, but we're wrapping up the series. This is not the end. It's actually just the beginning. It's committing to learning the laws. It's committing to applying the laws. And then most importantly, it's committing to handing off the baton of culture, values, and a legacy that you want to leave to those that are around you. So as we begin this 2026, what seeds are you planting that will not just make a difference for this year, that will not just make a difference for your lifetime, but will make a difference for the next generation and the generation beyond?